Hi everyone, Bill Duvendack here with the December 2022 astrological preview video. So get cozy. I'm sure you see the changed surroundings. As many of you know, I am working on new YouTube content, in particular a series called The Bishop's Library. And if you're not familiar with that, go to my YouTube channel, click like and subscribe while you're there, and check out the video. But when you see the videos that are there, this will all make sense. But long story short, I'm rebuilding my library, and as I go through this process of rediscovery, I'm inviting all of you to come along. So, having said that, let's start off with the fact that the beginning of December is really just an extension of the tail end of November. So what that means is it's not like you're going to get hit with a lot of major situations or scenarios once December begins. Now, yes, later in the month, things are going to heat up quite a bit. But for the first few days in December, unless you're a Thelemite, it's going to be pretty quiet. So you can expect this first weekend to go nice and quiet for the most part. It does start to get a little active right around the 3rd, but for the 1st and the 2nd, it's nice and quiet. Now, December starts off with Mars retrograde in Gemini, and then we have a Moon, Neptune, Jupiter conjunction in Pisces. So in the natural zodiac, Gemini and Pisces square each other, so there's some agitation energy there. But the fact that Mars is retrograde means that a lot of this agitation will be internal. So you won't have to be dealing with a lot of external situations. This is an opportunity for a lot of growth, a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of really developing your spirit. A lot of people forget that Pisces is the most psychic sign in the zodiac. Some would say it's the most spiritual. I don't know if I agree with that because spirituality is found in all signs. But the fact that Psyches, well, there's a clue for you. But the fact that Pisces is so focused on the psychic world and psychism means that you might be getting a lot of messages coming to you through dreams. It's also a good time to reorient yourself on your internal spiritual compass. The only thing to be careful of, though, is that Pisces also corresponds to escapism and addiction. So if you're prone to those, then this might be a very challenging time. Now, we have something that is occurring at the beginning of December, and it's going to last until the 12th. And that is, we have Mercury and Venus in Sagittarius squaring Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces. That is going to continue until the 12th. So for the first third of December, there might be conflict when it comes to communicating directly and how that impacts your audience. So if you know your audience is sensitive, then this particular transit tells us you want to practice some diplomacy. You know, a lot of people put emphasis on being brutally honest. How about compassionately honest? Do you ever think of that? This is a time to speak compassionately truthful. Who'da thunk it? Now, the Venus in Sagittarius, on one hand, calls for freedom of expression when it comes to the romantic life and your loved ones, but this is also money through investments. So these first 10 days in December is a good time to review your investments, whether they're financial, energetic, emotional, occupational, whatever the case may be. And you're probably going to find that in some way they irritate you, not necessarily with their return on investment, but rather your emotions might want something or your spirituality might want something. And here comes the information about the investments that says, well, that's a great ideal, but that's not the world we live in. So there could be some friction there to work out. A lot of that will be internal. It may have to do with the decision making process of listening to your intuition, but also being humble and accepting where you are at in life right now. Also, on the 3rd, we have Neptune stationing direct in Pisces. And really, this starts like the 2nd and it goes through about the 5th or so. When the outer planets station, meaning they're transitioning from retrograde to direct or direct to retrograde, for these outer planets, that lasts several days. So during that time, approximately the 2nd through the 5th or so, watch out for all things Neptunian. Now, in astrology, Neptune corresponds to metaphysics, meditation, the spirituality of all things. It is the unmanifested goddess, so it is the divine goddess principle. But in astrology, Neptune is also known as a lesser malefic, meaning that since it's a gas giant, you can't necessarily see things clearly, or there might be situations going on where you've been burying your head in the sand, and this is the time to pull it out of the sand. Now, Neptune also corresponds to addictions, so definitely have a handle on any of those, whatever they might be, because if you don't, this is a bad time. And that's saying it bluntly. Now, also on the 3rd, we have the moon in Aries trining Venus and Mercury in Sagittarius. So that particular time is a good opportunity to kind of deal with what was coming to light at the beginning of the month, so just a few days before, and making long-term changes, whether it's investments of money, investments of energy, occupational investments. A few days before this, you get hit with there's challenges with this. Now you are getting put in a position to do something about it. 4th's nice and quiet. For the 5th, we have the moon conjunct Uranus in Taurus. Now, Uranus in Taurus, long story short, means that any random thing can happen in the physical world and to the physical body and to the cash in your pocket. So when you have the moon blended in here, it tells us that your intuitive decisions, your emotions might get triggered by the unexpected happening on a daily basis. It could also mean that you feel a certain emotion well up deep from within you and explodes, and you have no idea that you were even hanging on to that stuff. So this is an important point to consider. Now, on a more mundane level, Taurus does correspond with food, so watch what you eat. It might be a mistake to impulse binge your favorite food, especially if you have some sort of intolerance to it. Watch out for cases of food poisoning. Also, watch out for the money that you carry on you. And that can be debit cards, but usually, and credit cards, but usually this is the money and the coin in your pocket. And this could be anything from dropping a $20 bill on the sidewalk and not realizing it until later, all the way to you find a $20 bill because your emotions are in a positive, happy place, and it puts you in a receptive state of mind to finding the blessings in everyday life. So watch what you eat and watch your money, basically the 5th through the 7th. Now the 6th is nice and quiet, but on the 7th we have Mercury moving into Capricorn. So it's a time you might find it wise to speak from a position of authority. You might find that this is a good time to send work and career focused emails and text messages that you've been waiting on because you just haven't felt like you've got a firm grasp on the words or what you want to convey. This is the time to do it. Pretty much the 7th through the majority of the month. Now, also on the 7th, we've got the moon or the sun in Sagittarius opposing the moon and Mars conjunction in Gemini. So we do have a full moon. Anytime you've got the sun opposing the moon, it's a full moon. And this one in particular could manifest as accidents while traveling. It could also manifest as when you go within to reevaluate your inner masculinity and how you use your internal energy, that you see a different way to approach things, one that is more in line with your spirituality and where you're going in the long run. The 8th, things start to kick a little more into high gear. We have a mutable sign T-square that is occurring between Venus and Sagittarius, Jupiter in Pisces, and the moon in Gemini. Now, for those longtime listeners here, you know that mutable sign T-squares are times of a lot of pressure, a lot of challenges, but also growth opportunities. So this particular time could be kind of rough. It could be kind of challenging, especially if you are a mutable sign. Now, the good news is all of this works as basically a snow globe so that things that are stagnant get shook up and put in a position for you to deal with. The good news about working with a mutable sign T-square is that it's mutable, which means that it is very responsive to change. And that's an important detail. With fixed sign T-squares, it's more about maintaining the status quo and just going through it. But with mutable signs, it's more about adaptability. So you might be adapting, but then this mutable T sign comes along, this mutable T-square comes along and says, well, yeah, you're adapting, but you're adapting in the wrong direction. You should be adapting this way. On the 10th, we have Venus following Mercury into Capricorn. So for the 9th, 10th, and 11th, watch your money, especially as it comes to you through the workplace. So this could manifest as an expected holiday bonus is not what you thought it would be, or maybe there's a delay in payroll. So kind of watch things financially during that particular weekend. But Venus in Capricorn also tells us it's a good time to take charge in your romantic relationships. It is a good time to approach things from a space of authority and wisdom. So in that regard, it's a good time to step into your own personal power, whatever that may be, especially when it has to do with two favorites, love and money. On the 11th, we have the moon in Cancer opposing Pluto in Capricorn. So watch out for your emotions. You could have a shorter temper than normal. If your emotions are out of sorts, you might be prone to accidents, whether physical accidents or maybe while driving or out and about. Sometimes this particular aspect can also mean violence, but I have found it's only if you're in an environment where that's a strong possibility. So kind of watch your back there. The 12th and the 13th, we have a grand trine in fire, and it involves the sun, Chiron, and the moon. The sun in Sagittarius, the Chiron in Aries, and the moon in Leo. So we see that mutable sign T-square from a few days before has now shifted into a trine. So those challenges that you have a few days before, if you can't wrap your head around it, or if you can't deal with it then this grand trine in fire on the 12th and the 13th is a good time to circle back and address those things there. Now, on the 14th, we have Mercury and the Venus, I like it, conjunct in Capricorn, squaring that Chiron in Aries. So you may find unhealed wounds having to do with a wounded sense of self or self-confidence or a sense of being get triggered through miscommunications, possibly romantic relationships, possibly how you spend or don't spend money. Another way to interpret this is perhaps you get an opportunity for an advancement in the career, but in order to take it, you have to confront your own personal demons in order to ascend to the next level. The 14th and 15th, we have a grand trine in Earth. So we shift from that fire energy, which is generally very fast and very motive, into an energy that is grounded, down to earth, and practical, specifically focusing on results in the physical world. So you can see that there's a three-piece layer here. The mutable sign T square on the 7th, 8th, and 9th kind of reveals to you the changes you need to make. Then the 12th and the 13th, you put the energy into making the changes, or at least wrapping your head around the changes. And then on the 14th, it's time for the rubber to hit the road. It's time to make all of these things happen and bring them down to physical world results. Now, the 16th, we have a moon in Virgo opposing Jupiter in Pisces. So watch your impulsive spending, but also be careful not to overthink. Now, keep in mind that I am not a big fan of the idea of overthinking. This was a piece of wisdom I got from my guides many years ago, which pointed out to me if you were guilty of overthinking and that was a bad thing, then you would be thinking less. It's kind of common sense here. And I point this out because the moon in Virgo can be very, very analytic. And it is wise to get analytical about your emotions and compartmentalize them to a certain degree. But if you spend all your time dwelling on them and putting them in their own little boxes, then you lose the emotional and the intuitive side, which is Jupiter in Pisces. So having a good blend of being in your body, yet still spiritually aware, is a good thing to cultivate during this time. The 17th brings us the moon in Libra opposing Chiron in Aries. So then we go from finding the balance between the analytical mind and the spiritual self on the 16th to then figuring out how harmonious you want your personal relationships to go and keeping the interference from any Chiron and Aries wounds that we talked about a few seconds ago to a minimum. And then the 18th continues that theme, the moon in Libra trine Saturn in Aquarius. So it's a good time to reach out for groups that can help you. It's a good time to find the resources that you need that are readily available and not cost prohibitive. But the moon in Libra also squares Pluto in Capricorn. So if you're reaching out trying to find these resources and you can't find them, then this moon square Pluto tells us you might have a tendency to lose your temper and blow your top. So watch the self-control. Also on the 18th, we have an Earth grand trine. It's happening between Venus and Mercury in Capricorn, trining Uranus in Taurus. And what is really interesting about this is that this is a time when you might look at everything around you, because we are coming up on the end of the calendar year, and think, I got through all of this year and this is all I have to show for it. Or, oh, I had these plans at the beginning of the year and now I'm seeing that I dropped the ball or they didn't work out. Or perhaps it is, the job's been great, now I got a promotion and it's horrible. So there's a lot of different ways that this can come into play. The easiest way to handle it is to practice meditation, keep your thoughts clear, keep your mind clear, and decide where to go from there. Then on the 19th, the moon in Scorpio is sextiling, or getting along well with, Venus in Capricorn. So listen to your intuition when it comes to the workplace. And if you do, there's a good chance you'll find money in your career that you didn't know about, or you'll put yourself in a position to get some that you were not sure whether or not it would happen. And this is also a good time for romantic relationships to do some healing and some deeper bonding with your partner or partners. Scorpio is that sign of passion, intensity, really lustful in a lot of ways. And Venus in Capricorn is all about maturity and authority, especially when it comes to love. Now, also on that day, though, we do have Venus in Capricorn opposing Uranus in Taurus. So if you decide to work with the route of working with the romance, be careful it does not detract from your physical world and your physical life. The 20th is very significant because that is when Jupiter enters into Aries, which is going to stay in quite a while. Now, keep in mind, Jupiter is the planet of the expansion of consciousness, the development of the higher mind, spirituality. It's known as the guru planet, so it corresponds to Buddha. And any time that it makes a move like this, number one, it's not going to happen in a day. So you might start feeling this as early as like the 16th, 17th, with those oppositions that are going on with Jupiter in the tail end of Pisces and Chiron in mid-Aries. And number two, this might also manifest as spiritual conundrums. So tread lightly and conservatively on about the 18th through the 22nd while the dust settles. But Jupiter is going to stay there at those early points of Aries for quite a while. So play it safe through the rest of December and into early January 2023. Now, the 21st has the moon in Sagittarius trining that Jupiter in Aries. So while you're playing things conservatively, the message that we get here from the planets is that just because you're playing it conservatively now does not mean that you shouldn't lay the groundwork for next year, next calendar year. Go ahead and plan it, brainstorm, think big. Just don't act on it yet. The 23rd, we have the new moon or the 22nd, get ahead of myself, but you see what's coming. The 22nd, we have the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, so it is a time of maximum darkness. And in the southern hemisphere, it is the summer solstice, the time of maximum light. So it's a time of extremes, as I've talked about in essays elsewhere. And following that on the 22nd is the new moon in Capricorn. So you see, we've basically got the solstice and the new moon at the same time. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, you've got the dark of the moon and you've got the time of maximum darkness happening on the same day. So if you're prone to bipolar tendencies or prone to depression, put this on your radar that you might have to put extra work into keeping your optimism. This also means for the creative people out there that this is a good time to move sub rosa. And I'm not going to explain that. Look it up. But it is a good time to do those things. Now, also on that day, because that's not enough, we have Chiron in Aries stationing to go direct. So from approximately the 21st until about the 25th or so, wounds having to do with a wounded sense of being, a wounded sense of self, anything having to do with your self-confidence or your self-esteem, the wounds aren't going to get triggered. No. The scab that you've put on them is going to get pulled off, and the flame of enlightenment is going to come in and cauterize the shit out of that wound. Hope you're ready. Sometimes the best therapy is burning it all away, but I think we know that already. Also, beginning on the 23rd and lasting for a few days, we have a stellium in Capricorn. Now, a stellium is when we have 3 or more planets in the same sign. So from about the 23rd to about the 25th or 26th, it's all about the Capricorn energy. So if you're a Capricorn, this is a fantastic opportunity for new beginnings to capitalize on. If you're a ceremonial magician, this is a good time to work with those Capricorn energies. If you have a belief outside of conventional norms and conventional thoughts, this is a good time to indulge. But the danger during this time is letting your lower toxic ego get in the way. Because Capricorn, as much as it corresponds to authority, it can also correspond to condescension, closed-mindedness, rigidity in thought, hubris. And of course, we know hubris comes before a fall each and every time. On the 25th, we have the Sun square Jupiter. So again, we return to that theme of playing things conservatively and keeping your cards close to your chest. And that's going to basically be in effect from about solstice till the 26th. And on the 26th, we through the 28th, we have Pluto blended with Mercury and Venus in Capricorn. So this window of time, the 26th through the 28th, is a fantastic time to make those deep changes in the name of maturing and growth that you know you need to make. I could get on a soapbox here, but I love you all too much to do that. I think it's kind of clear though. Watch out for you getting in the way of yourself. So watch out for self-sabotage by being closed-minded to what others have to say, especially those that are experts in their fields. That's another tangent. I'm going to skip it because it's the last calendar month, the holidays are coming up, and I want you to put your time on the fun things. On the 28th, because the calendar year is not done yet. On the 28th, we have Mercury in Capricorn. Guess what? Mercury's stationing retrograde. That's right, 2022 ends on a Mercury retrograde note, and it's going to be retrograde until January 19th. So let this be a warning to get your paperwork and your end of the year and your end of the month stuff all done in the first half of December. That opens up the last few days of December to act as a filter and catch anything you might have missed. Now, Mercury in Capricorn retrograde is all about revisiting things at the workplace, maybe reevaluating where you're going professionally. It's also a good time to practice humility. Many times Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, I see play out as someone speaking from a position of authority on a subject until they meet the bigger fish who puts them in their place. Now, on that day, we also have the moon conjunct Neptune in Pisces. So that's a time when you might be prone to illusions, delusions, escapism. So you can see how instances of Mercury retrograde in Capricorn come along to humble you. And with this moon conjunct Neptune, it's saying, don't bury your head in the sand. Maybe you are the problem, but the Mercury retrograde in Capricorn will tell you whether you are or not. This has played out a lot over the last few years in social media with a lot of people that do nothing but research YouTube videos thinking they're an expert on the subject. You know, these are the same kind of people that fuck up and say that the term is astrologist and not the centuries, if not thousands of years old term astrologer. It's that kind of stuff. The 29th, we now have a stellium in Aries. So you see that stellium in Capricorn has shifted to Aries. So now is a good time to plan how you're going to hit 2023 running. What exactly are you going to do? What new routes are you going to take? How are you going to improve your self-confidence? How are you going to improve where you're going and being a conscious creator or co-creator of your life, depending on your personal and spiritual beliefs? And then finally, on the 30th and 31st, we end on that stellium in Aries note against the backdrop of the Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, and we come back to that Capricorn stellium. So the year ends on two stelliums. Jupiter, the moon, and Chiron in Aries, and the Capricorn stellium on New Year's Eve for Pluto, Mercury retrograde, Venus, and the Sun. In the natural zodiac, Aries squares Capricorn. Both are cardinal signs, which means both are forward-thinking and progressive. But the forward-thinking, progressive nature of Capricorn is all about I know best, so I'm moving forward. And the cardinal nature of Aries is it's all about me. Fuck authority or what I know. So then you add that Mercury retrograde into the mix and you see that that's a good recipe for a very challenging New Year's Eve. As I learned many years ago, if you're out and about on New Year's Eve, that's generally considered rookie night or amateur night, because that's when the amateurs are out. So this year, you might want to have a quiet New Year's Eve celebration at home in light of all this. Now, by that same token, if you are a masochist or you like being in the line of fire, then go out on New Year's Eve for sure. But it definitely tells us that 2022 is going to go out with a bang. And with that bang, I'm going to wrap it up for now. Thank you all for checking this out. Don't forget that I am continuing to do my daily horoscopes on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. The monthly horoscopes are up on the website as well. So, happy holidays. Regardless of what you celebrate, I am looking forward to Saturnalia and Krampusnacht myself, but there's a lot more in there. And until we chat again, may we all receive blessings of good health, prosperity, and success as we move forward on the final month of 2022, setting the stage for 2023, which, by the way, a little secret, 2023 is a 7 year, and 7's the number of magic, right there with 11. Have fun. I'll see you in a month.